May I suggest that we begin and we call upon the moderator and the panelists to come to the stage. I would like to introduce our moderator, Richa Goyal, who is a very well-known author, journalist. Oh, she's not here? She's coming? Okay. We'll wait a moment until she's here. And meanwhile, as I said, we have this announcement. Then we have another announcement, which is about the program tomorrow. If you look at your program of tomorrow, you will see that we start the day at 9 o'clock with an hour-long, of an hour, 45-minute, 50-minute panel or introduction by three executives that will speak about investment opportunities and the investment environment in Qatar. Then you see that there is a gap and that we start the next panel at 1:30 in the afternoon. That means that lunch is at 12:30 at the net. And at 1:30 we will start tomorrow the panel that is moderated by Dr. Frank Muller, adding value to diamonds and gemstones and keeping consumers captivated, which is a follow-up panel to what we actually did today. Seeing that our moderator has arrived, please, Richa, come up to the stage and take your seat. And we ask the other panelists to come and join us. They are Elena Basaglia of Italy, but she works for, of course, for Gemfield. She's head of partnerships and product downstream. Dev Shetty, who is introduced as of Gemstone International Mining Investment Company, but I would also say of Gemora Gem House, a company that just has been launched a few days ago and is going to do, as you heard, the first big sapphire auction in Dubai very soon. And then last and not least, Rashmi Sharma and Peter Bracher. Rashmi is Director of Jewel of Africa and has come all the way from Zambia, and Peter has flown all the way from Australia because he is an executive director of Paspali Pearling Company. I was just saying to him that I had one of the best mining tour that as a gemstone specialist I did in my life was a visit to the Paspali operations that were in Broome, where they have the, what do you call it, the incubators? And you have, on the coast, you have the farms. And I was also in Darwin and visited the ships at that time, which was also impressive. Anyway, Richa is going to do the rest of the introductions, but I must say that I feel a kind of envy, because in my blood, I always was a colored gemstone guy, and I the founding editor of In Color Gemstone magazine that still exists, that's owned by ICA. And I'm envious of her authorship and of what she's doing today, because I've been in diamonds so long now. So, Richa, the floor is yours with your moderators. Do you all have microphones? And
testing.
There we go. Thank you so much for doing this. Wonderful. A unicum, the first ever colored gemstone panel at a conference of this stature. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can we get some sound? Turn it on. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Hold on. Wait, turn it on. Sorry. There you go. Checking. Oh, yes. Oh. Well, Jacob, it's not too late. You can always shift. It's never too late. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. I hope you didn't have that extra helping of dessert. Can you guys see me? I'm here. Hello. Feel free to shift to this side. There's lots of room. And I've been told that if you're in the second row, you get $100 at the end of this panel discussion. Right. So this afternoon, we're going to delve deeper into colored gemstones. And I have 4 fantastic individuals here. Is everyone's mic working? Dave, yours is not working? Yes? All good. Great. So I have 4 fantastic individuals here. We're going to try and not make too many motherhood and apple pie statements and be focused and specific, giving as many examples as we possibly can. So I'm going to be your guide. I'm moderating this session. And yeah, so you've already been introduced, all four of them. I come from organizations that have pioneered various initiatives that have transformed gemstones and pearls. So without further ado, I'm going to get cracking and start hitting them with the easy and difficult questions I have planned. Now, there was a time when the conversation in the room, and as Jacob said, was dominated by diamonds and gold. But I would say, especially in the last 2 decades, maybe the spotlight hasn't completely shifted to colored gemstones and pearls, but there has been a significantly increased interest in colored gemstones and pearls. And so the first question that I want to throw to our panelists is that what do you think are the factors that have contributed towards this increased interest and have accelerated this increased interest, especially in the last 4 to 5 years? So maybe, Peter, I could start with you and we can work our way back to me.
Okay, thank you, Richa. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and to the organizers for inviting me and allowing this opportunity. Probably most of you don't think too often about pearls. But I would say, I won't speak for colored stones. I have no expertise in it. I would say that obviously all of us were affected by the ramifications of COVID, which is obviously one of the big factors that caused the increase. But taking that out of the picture, for pearls, I would say it's largely been fashion driven. There's been especially the last 10 years, I'd say, an increased, people are much more interested in sustainability. They're interested in things of that nature, and there's been a big increase in young people wearing pearls, and especially influential people wearing pearls. In fact, I'd say that throughout the last 100 years, if you think of the fashion icons of each decade, they were always wearing pearls. Started with Coco Chanel, and then it was Monroe, and it was Jacqueline Kennedy, Princess Diana, and now it's Rihanna and Beyonce and men, Harry Styles and Justin Bieber, and people like that. I think that's really been driving the increase in demand over the last 5 to 10 years.
Rashmi, anything you'd like to add to that?
So hello everybody, distinguished guests. Thank you, Richa, for having me here. Just finishing off on pearls and Zambia, it seems to be in fashion all the time, pearls. And since we started since the foreigners or the investors started gaining interest in Zambian gemstones, I personally have been trying to get Zambians to advocate Zambian gemstones, but it's a really tough one to get them off of the pearls and onto the Zambian gemstone. So I represent Jewel of Africa. We've been mining emeralds, and we've mined tourmalines and amethysts and other gemstones that Zambia has. It seems to be exploding with gemstones in every single province. So this is where I'm representing. I'm the only one representing Zambia, it seems, right now. And Gemfields a little bit. Well, Elena. So
Right, Elena, anything you want to add to that? What do you think are the factors that are contributing? I mean, you've been in the industry for 20 years and with Gemfields for over 10 years. So you have kind of seen how things were maybe a decade ago and how the conversation is. So what do you think are some of the contributing factors?
So from our perspective, the turning point really in terms of desirability for colored gemstones was the introduction of our auction system. Not only that, but how we auction our product as well made a big, big difference into the supply of colored gemstones, the appreciation of consumer, and the fact that finally jewelry brands, instead of going on treasure hunts, were able to plan their creative efforts and actually create full suites of colored gemstones, and speaking specifically rubies and emeralds. Because Gemfields auction provided a stable supply, transparent and organized. So lapidaries and manufacturer, with the start of Gemfields auctions, emerald auction actually we started in 2009, followed by ruby auctions in 2012. And these two events have provided stability to a market that previous was very fragmented. Our auctions are conducted at regular intervals of time during the year. Our auction customers and lapidaries know what to expect from our auctions. We mine and produce for 6 months and sell thereafter. The product at our auction is also presented well graded. So we developed a proprietary grading system which takes in consideration the unique characteristic of the mine's production, which is huge. And just to give you an example, for emeralds, we have more than 300 unique grades of rough emeralds that we compile in unique parcels, all uniform within themselves, and we sell them as single parcels at the auction. For rubies, we identified more than 500 grades of rough rubies. So the division of our mine's production is very meticulous. But this really allowed our customers and the lapidaries to really target the product that meets their market needs and identities. Because that's very important. They only go towards the production that they know they've got a market for, and therefore they can continue to get their factory to continue working. And quite interestingly, our system, the system introduced by Gemfields with the set of auctions, proved to be so successful, not only for us, but for the whole industry. We've done a little exercise last year. We counted how many auctions of colored gemstones happened in 2024. And we come from 2009, when Gemfields was the only one. 2024, there were 21 auctions of colored gemstones across the year. That means 2 auctions a month as an average. And that means that our auction customers basically never attended their offices and were always called to go and buy and buy and buy and buy. Again, this is a proof that obviously demand is there, and it's a proof that desirability is there, both from a marketer, so from a seller perspective, or from a consumer perspective too.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I remember having a conversation when I was writing an article on their auction system, I remember having a conversation with an emerald specialist in Jaipur. And this was exactly what he said, that, earlier we had to buy rough emeralds or rubies of mixed grades. So even if I was specializing in a particular category, I had to buy things that I wasn't specializing in. And so at least with the auction system now, first by Gemfields and then replicated by many other companies, they're able to focus on what they're specializing in. Dave, your thoughts?
Look, I think from my perspective, having been involved from day one of my Gemfield story, and I was the first guy who put this auction platform together, 2009. See, I see it a little bit differently. The most important thing, and people still don't remember this fact, that color gemstone has been in existence since Cleopatra's time, right? Cleopatra used to mine emeralds, and diamond is comparatively a very new story. It's like 500, 600-year-old story. Though color gemstone always existed, one of the biggest issue that existed was lack of organized supply, right? And that is exactly what we did when I first started in Gemfields, the turnaround story of Gemfields. And when I moved to Fura, we continued the same story. The most important thing in color gemstone is not only by giving consistent supply, but also keep telling the story. We have been hearing in the morning about the diamond side of the story, like, they are now telling that we need to tell a story, we need to tell this. In fact, they have been doing so nicely. And I used to say when I first time met, in 2010, I think I met Stefan Lucia in his London office, and he called me to his office and said, yeah, what different things you are going to do in Gemfields. And I said, the only thing I'm going to do is copy De Beers. We used to say that proudly, that there is no secret in that, and we did that. I think we followed. I think they have been the industry leader, and we used to say, we used to learn from what good thing they did, and what bad thing they did. We used to do, and that's a good, and that is how the industry leaders are. They teach people like us what to do and what not to do. I think in color gemstones, one of the key reasons why the success has been so quick and so fast, more than organized supply, the demand was always there. And people ask me, with Gemfields and with Fura coming in, and maybe more mine coming, is the price is going to go down? The answer is absolutely no. The price will never go down, because diamond is 120 million carats approximately rough supply. If you compare color gemstone, quality per quality is not even 10 million carats. You put emerald, ruby, and sapphires. There is so much of catch-up to be done. So the important aspect is the margins for the retailers are so high. Yes. Okay. Luckily, I say there is no wrap net and wrap sheet yet for color gemstones, so there is no price reference, and it's what the jeweler wants to charge and what the customer wants to pay, and that keeps the margin for them. And you would see that the more supply that will come to the market, the price will only keep ticking up and up. And you see the auction numbers, it throws the numbers out that in spite of the China being so depressed, which has been one of the factors where gemstone industry has been hit, the prices are going up, which is one of the things that you would say. The key thing for us in color gemstone space, Richa, is we would struggle to meet demand even in next 20 years. That is what is going to happen.
Okay, interesting. So I did a little bit of research myself on this question, and some of the findings that I came across was that also the rising price of gemstones has contributed to giving confidence to customers. And customers have been confused, and there has been a little bit of a confidence crisis as far as diamonds are concerned, and the colored gemstones and pearls have benefited from that confusion. And also, speaking with jewelry manufacturers and designers, the cost of gold going up, many have switched instead of using gold, used beads, colored gemstone beads and pearls to string traditional jewelry or modern jewelry, and used gemstones and pearls when the price of gold had really gone up a lot. So I think all of these factors have also contributed. So I want to do a follow-up question on this and talk a little bit about Africa origin, and how, and I'll start with you, Elena, and then I'll go to Dev on this. And how do you think, but this is a democracy. If anyone else wants to say something, and I haven't said your name, feel free to jump in. Democracy within limits. So Elena, how do you think the perception and acceptance of African gemstones, and specifically Zambian emeralds and Mozambique rubies, has changed, especially with the big brands? Because when we look at auction houses, when we look at Sotheby's and Christie's, and it's African origin also in terms of valuation and pricing has always received a step-brotherly treatment. One can say it is because of the rarity of or the better-known brand name of Burma rubies, Colombian emeralds. So what has been your experience over the last decade in this respect?
So we can easily start from the end of the story and then walk back to the beginning. The end of the story is that 2024 saw for Gemfields the celebration of a few milestones, actually. One, it was reaching a congregated revenue, total revenue for both sets of auctions of 1 billion, which is huge for the colored gemstone sector. Fine, you guys in diamonds speak about bigger number usually. For us, this is really a huge achievement. It was also concluding 50 emerald auctions. That's, again, another huge achievement. And 10 years of ruby auctions. So 10 years of consecutive ruby auction, bringing Mozambican rubies transparently to the market. Across these years of auctions, we had the pleasure of welcoming new customers almost every year, new lapidaries, new businesses that were able to enter into the gemstones, whether it's from the diamond world coming to gemstones, whether it's from other areas of the luxury business coming to color gemstones. So for us, it's been very interesting to see how new company, new kids on the block were able to come and be successful at our auction. It's also true that the responsibly bringing gemstones to the market has been a promise of Gemfields since day one of our operations. And it's also true, though, that only in recent years it has got more attention than before. And so, in fact, Gemfields got scrutiny, if we want to call it negatively, but got attention from the customers of our customers. So we're not vertical. We stop at the sales of rough gemstones to lapidaries. But in recent years, jewelry brands and luxury groups started posing attention on their whole supply chain, reaching all the way to us being the source of their gemstones. And so we welcomed their order requests with open arms, because for us was a way to improving our operation where we didn't see the need to do that. So we became acutely aware of the importance of human rights, of many, many aspects that when you're deep into the mining world, you might not see as evidently as somebody else who needs to respond to the needs of a consumer. So having the opportunities that we had and the relationship that we have with the compliance officers of the various luxury groups and jewelry brands, being able to invite them to the mines and for them to see for their eyes where the gemstones come from, it actually meant that, that luxury groups and jewelry brands had increased trust into Africa, or at least our countries as a place of origin of their gemstones. So yes, perception has definitely changed for the better, and demand continues to be very vivid.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Dave, briefly?
Look, I think, Richa, again, I heard the origin discussion in the morning by the diamond players. Yes. And I always say origin has got a plus and minus, you know. And again, from the color gemstone guy like us, and here we play a very important role because for us, last 40 years, you can even tell whether the rubies are coming from Burma or it's coming from Mozambique. The lab has been pretty good in picking up the inclusion analysis. You know, the plus thing is obviously what Elena said, you know, you can go back and trace and say where the origin is. The minus that I see in this is if the same ruby, same looking ruby, same fluorescence is coming from Mozambique, and if the same stone you keep is coming from Burma, the Burma will get 2 times the price compared to Mozambique. That's because the certification company feels it's Burma and it's not Mozambique, right? So that's the negative side of the origin analysis. The beauty of the stone is kept aside, and the certificate is given more important. It determines the price, and that's a fact. And does the brand stop buying Colombian emerald? The answer is no. You know, I built the mine in both sides of the world, and I built the Zambian emerald mine for Gemfields, and I built the Colombian emerald mine for Fura. And I've seen both sides, and I think I completely agree with Elena. If you are able to give a comfort to the end consumer, where the product is coming from, they are definitely going to buy. But I can tell you with confidence, and I'm telling you with my personal experience in 20 years, if you go and tell the client, this product is coming from Zambia or Colombia, and this is the location, give me $10 more, they won't even pay you $1 extra. But what they will do, they will come and buy your product with a lot of confidence. And that has been the mantra that we have always played, that give the traceability, push the origin, no matter what, don't think of making extra dollar on it, because I'm telling you in my personal experience, having done this so many times, they won't pay you even a single dollar extra, right? So it's important, and obviously it's very important, but I think the time has come where people value the product more than origin, you know?
Yes, and hopefully that'll keep going. So in between the questions, also wanted to give two quick market updates. One of the problems my editors have with me is that I always over-research. So I have done the same for this panel as well. And I had a few conversations with Jaipur. Now, for those who may not know, 90 to 95% of Zambian emeralds are cut and polished in Jaipur in India. And the feedback that I got on demand was that 8 to 10 months, you could sell rough emeralds quite quickly, even after they had passed 2-3 hands. And there was a really strong momentum, especially after the ginormous Ambani wedding, that if none of you know what I'm talking about, then you were living under a rock. And so there was a big sort of ripple effect of that, which was beneficial for the emerald industry. But 6 months ago, things have slowed down as far as emeralds are concerned. There is a little bit of a supply glut, not very serious, but also because the prices of rough emeralds are still quite strong and high. And another producer from Zambia, Grizzly, had an auction where they brought a lot of material and they were a little more relaxed on the price front, and that brought in a lot of supply in the market. So right now, people are still buying, but they're buying what they need at the moment. And so that's interesting. And also, I stumbled across some information related to diamonds, not that I was looking for it, but a jewelry manufacturer said something very interesting about diamonds to me, and I thought it would be nice to share this. He said, I asked him, what's happening with diamonds? Our price is going down, our price is up, you keep hearing all these mixed things. He said, well, all I can tell you is my experience. Earlier, if I had to sell diamonds, and I'm a jewelry manufacturer, but sometimes to special high net worth clients, we supply them with diamonds, my profit margin could be 2%. He's like, now, when someone is coming to me and they need diamonds, they need specific type of diamonds, I'm able to make a 10 to 15% profit on them. So it's a great time to buy diamonds. And I thought I would just, I say this all the time. This is the best time to buy diamonds, you guys. So, right, we digressed. But so I want to also mention something that's happened related to emeralds, and we will talk about that next, Rashmi. I think a couple of weeks ago, the government of Zambia, without consulting the industry, introduced a 15% export tax on emeralds, not on other gemstones, only on emerald export from Zambia. To give you some context, the comparable tax in Colombia is 2.5%, and I think in Brazil, correct me if I'm wrong, is 2%, right? So before I come to you, Rashmi, I want to share, why don't I come to you first and then I'll share the Sri Lanka update. So tell me, how has the industry responded? I did a post on LinkedIn when I learned about this saying, and the title of that post was, is this the death of Zambian emeralds and the Zambian emerald industry as we know it? What has been, tell us what's happening on the ground, give us the latest update. Over to you.
So that was our New Year's gift to us, miners and value adders. So we got a 15% hit, and apparently it hasn't been implemented yet. Everybody's holding off. The government has repeatedly said they will revoke it.
Okay, so that's good news.
Yes, so then people can start selling again. But I mean, not only do we have 15% export tax, we also have the highest mineral royalty tax in the country. So
what is that?
Sorry,
what
6%.
Is that? Okay.
Compared to Colombia and Brazil, which is 1.5%. So it's quite high. The government is also trying to figure out how to resolve this. There are a lot of associations that are writing to the government at the moment, and Jewel of Africa partakes in all of these associations and gives them their input, because we've been around for 32 years.
Ezra, right? Is that the correct
Yes, that's
term?
one of them.
Yes.
And then the Colored Stone, the other Tourmaline and other associations are also coming in, because who knows who's next.
Right. Is there sales happening? Is there export happening, or have all the producers stopped at the moment?
The rough,
Yeah, the export, is that stopped at the
the
moment?
export
So there's no
of
sales?
rough has stopped.
Okay,
Jewel of Africa supplies cut and polished
Okay.
and jewelry.
yeah,
So we're okay.
right.
So yeah, we should be fine within. I mean,
But
the
right
Indaba's
now
coming up in next week
Yes.
in South Africa. They need to
Yes.
have a statement over there.
Yes.
That's all I can say right now. I'm not permitted to say anymore.
Okay, fine. I won't put you in a tricky spot, but it's definitely a wait and watch strategy at the moment. And so, to give you a quick update from Sri Lanka, demand is there was a recent big gem show that happened in Sri Lanka called Facets. Demand was strong, but of course, the Chinese demand is down. It's down like 30 to 40% is what I found out. People are only primarily looking for really fine material, and strong demand for top grade, no surprise there. India is still quite strong, and dealers were there in full form buying sapphires and other gemstones at the show in Sri Lanka. And so the market has softened in the last year and a half, but the good news is that because supply, good or bad, whichever way you want to see it, because supply is also slow and soft and supply has been tight, prices have not come down. So prices have still been holding strong as far as gemstones are concerned. So Peter, having listened to all the ups and downs in colored gemstones, are things as roller coaster like on the Pearl planet? Can you tell us a little bit more about, production, sales? What are some of the processes? Educate us on South Sea pearls and how are things done on your planet?
Well, production is very stable actually with South Sea pearls because the lead times to increase production are long. It takes 2 to 3 years to produce a pearl. So if we make a decision to increase production today, we'll get the result in 2 to 3 years' time. So we can't respond quickly to market forces, and which is good actually because it gives us time to build demand before we build supply. We don't just respond to market forces.
And you do something unique and different from other markets which are supplying South Sea pearls. I remember you were telling me about it. Like if you had to increase supply, what is the process that you have to follow?
Well, the supply can only be increased through when the wild oyster population increases naturally because we've been a regulated industry for about 40 years. We had fishing regulations put on the industry in about 1984, and the fisheries department moderates the number of oysters that can be collected each year, and so we get some visibility into that, some advanced notice of when the numbers will fluctuate up or down, and we can start putting in the infrastructure that's required to take up that quota if we want to do it. But it'll take. We can't increase it any more than about 5% per annum.
And what about
if it
demand?
goes well.
And sorry, I'm jumping in, but what about demand for South Sea pearls? How has that been in the last decade? Paint a picture for us on the sales trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, demand's been very strong, especially at the top end, for the last at least 5 years. For particular categories, particular sizes, the demand has been very, very strong. But as a lot of the panelists have been saying today, from in the diamond sector, it's really critical to build demand through branding and through storytelling. I mean, if you're selling a commoditized product, it's just a race to the bottom.
Yes.
Nobody's pricing a Cartier love bracelet or a Trinity ring based on the weight of the gold that it contains. That's kind of irrelevant, and that's the same thing when it comes to pearls, same thing when it comes to diamonds, same thing when it comes to colored stones. You have to create an emotional connection to the product, and that's how you create demand and how you create long-term price stability.
So in the face of increased demand, rising prices, a lot of consumers have also shifted towards vintage and the antique segment. I mean, I was at the Hong Kong show in September last year, and the one hall which was vibrant and buzzing was the antique hall. And so, and I remember standing in a booth and overhearing this conversation. There was a gem merchant buying a ring which I think had this fabulous sapphire or spinel in it, and he was negotiating and saying that, you don't understand, I'm only interested in the stone. I'm anyway going to get the stone out of the ring. I have no use for the ring. So, you know, and it's something that is said often, that the biggest mine in the world is the antique and vintage segment. So coming to pearls, do you see this resurgence and this consumers seeking value and gravitating towards the antique and vintage segment? Do you see that as competition in your sphere? And then I would ask the colored gemstone people to also respond and jump in if they'd like to add their thoughts.
Yeah. No, I don't think anything to do with jewelry is competition. I think that competition is holidays and cars and experiences. I think that, I mean, the pearl market is maybe 5%, maybe 3% of the jewelry market. So we've got a lot of growing we can do without making an impact on the rest of the market. And so, no, I think it's the more people that are interested in antique pearls, the more they'll be interested in contemporary pearls. The most important thing is that they're interested in jewelry.
Right.
Yeah, just to add
Rashmi?
on to that, sorry. I think there's the property market as well, which is a competition. Yeah, and so my market is the US, right? We export directly end product. So it's cut and polished, manufactured, or sold as gems alone. And the one thing that my customers are extremely interested is in proof of provenance. They need to know that it's been mined responsibly, that the locals are value adding, that they are benefiting the country and its people. And with Jewel of Africa, we have various projects that we, through the, well, not yet, not through the foundation, through Jewel of Africa. So my buyers will actually pay $500 or $1,000 more just to be comforted that they are helping somebody on the ground.
Okay.
So
That's
no
encouraging.
vintage, no, doesn't compete.
Okay, that's good to know. Elena, anything you want to add on that?
I actually agree with both statements.
Okay.
In that vintage jewelry is definitely complementary to newly mined gemstones, in that the supply of superfine gemstones is slim, comes very rarely, and therefore for a dealer it's good to be able to have 2 points of supply. So one being the vintage market and one being the newly mined gemstones. However, representing a mining company that mines colored gemstones from the ground, I can't deny, but I would have huge problems, feeling comfortable purchasing myself a vintage piece of jewelry where any claim about traceability or provenance are arguable. And so I wouldn't want to have that kind of riddle of problems on me. Fine, the Gemfils group includes Fabergé, so we do celebrate heritage, but that's a different story. So I don't know, I wouldn't feel super comfortable proceeding with a vintage purchase.
And what about you, Dev? I mean, with Fura and Columbia, the vintage and antique market is full of jewelry featuring Colombian emeralds. So what has been your experience with when you were with Fura on
Look,
that
I think
front?
whether it's Fura or Gemfils, I can tell you, vintage market is going to remain. I think it's not only the Hong Kong show. You go to Sotheby's and Christie's, you will see a lot of collection that comes. Not all vintage collection is marketed. You know, it's been presented when you go in Geneva. You sit there, people will show you, right? And that has always been the source for a lot of the dealer community to come and buy. And you're right. I think a lot of people buy to buy a center stone, but you have got second set of people who wants to collect it. and they look for these kind of collection as a part of a jewelry. Now, whether that has got demand, the answer is yes. Whether that group looks into the source or origin, I don't know. Like, how can you go and trace it back to whether it's coming from old muso? Like, there is a lot of certification in Colombia talks about old muso or a old mine, and what is old mine? No one knows what is old mine. So it's one of those things. The demands are there, and it's still a source for collecting centerpiece. But at the same time, people also buy for collections.
Yes, absolutely. And those consumers are competing with the dealers for these pieces. So it has changed. So looking ahead, let's talk about your latest venture, Gemora Gem House. You already got a lovely plug earlier in the day. So tell us, what is Gemora Gem House? What was the motivation to go down this path?
Gemora Gem House, the concept we have been thinking for a while. Actually, personally, I also have been thinking for many years. But I think the idea came from my team. I don't want to take the credit away from them. And we were brainstorming like what next, like having been in the mining side for so many years, what is that something we can do it different? And we went back to the basics. And one of the long-lasting demand by the trade community has been that when they cut and polish the top end of the segment, the rare, precious color gemstone, they don't have right platform to sell. Like 8 out of 10 times, they hide in the shows, in the safe, in a black box. There is a concept of black box for the dealer community, and they just take it for the 1 or 2 clients who come to their booth, and they show it to them, and if they buy, they buy. If they don't buy, it goes back to the black box. So Gemora, at Gemora, what we have now come with the concept is provide that platform for the trade. So we are going to deal with only top end and very rare color gemstones. And it's an auction platform, it's an auction house, but it's only dedicated to polished color gemstones. So we are going to see, the first one is in March in Dubai Diamond Exchange in Almas Tower, and it's dedicated to sapphires, only sapphires. We are not going to have more than 24 pieces. And as I said, it's polished, so we are going to have a rare Kashmir collection. We will have some nice Madak sapphires. We are going to have Sri Lankan sapphires. We are going to have a loop-kin paparacha 20 plus carat, which I have seen. I've never seen paparacha of that type in my life. I've got 58 carat loop-kin blue.
I love how you're not leaving the opportunity to get into the catalog mode.
Yeah. But the why I'm saying you this is because in traditional, like in the past, if you want to go and talk to the dealers that have you got something special, he will not show it to you unless you know that person for last 25 years. And this is the gap that we are trying to bridge in Gemora Gem House. Same auction model we are going to follow. We are going to show people, allow 3 days to see the product, and they'll bid on the tender platform.
But the difference is, correct me if I'm wrong, now of course you have Christie's and Sotheby's also auctioning loose gemstones and diamonds, right? And marketing them. But the difference here is that unlike the conventional auction houses, you're not going to publish the final price at which that stone was sold. And so can you tell us a little bit, I mean, because we're now in this age of transparency, right? Where, so how is that going to work? And can you tell us a little bit more about what you will share and what you won't share? And because let's be honest, when we look at diamonds, majority of that supply is institutional. And with colored gemstones, the supply is not still, despite the work that Gemfields and Fura and Potentate Mining and others have done around the world, there's a large chunk of that supply which is not clean and clear. So given that, and given that this push for transparency, what aspects will you share and what won't you share, and what is the motivation to not share?
So look, transparency is a very loose word, I would say, Richa. I don't think Gemfields will come and tell you his ex-client is buying $1 million worth of ruby with the name of the client. So they just disclose a particular number as a whole, right?
Sure.
And so that doesn't mean they are not transparent. So they are transparent, right? And the same goes with the Fura mine that I built. So if you go back to the word transparency, we are transparent to my client. So my client is going to be B2B client, right? And there has been a demand by the client that when the special stone comes to the market, it has to be discreet, because at the end of the day, they are also going to go and sell onward. And so what we are now doing, I think we had a very good meeting with Clemens. Clemens is sitting there. We are tying up with, potentially we are tying up with him to do the entire blockchain for our product. And we are going to build the transparency leg. But where does it stop? For me, it has to stop to my client. You're right, we are not going to announce the price. We are not going to announce the name of the buyer. That is purely because we are selling loose. We are not selling jewelry, right? And 9 out of 10 times, you have never seen Sotheby's and Christie's marketing a loose, vivid pink diamond. It is set in a ring. So they are promoting set jewelry, right? But we are not going to do that. We are going to sell loose. It's a different platform than what the traditional auctions have done. And our transparency stop to what we are going to commit to our client. And it's going to be B2B. Eventually, they are going to design it into a jewelry. And we will then transfer the blockchain key to the client to go and tell to the client that they have bought from Gemora Gem House. So that platform, we are going to open it to them, and that is how we are going to build this segment. And there is going to be KYC norm. The suppliers are going to be audited. We have already reached out to Kinjal to get the platform RGC certified. So we are going to do that. So we are going to do everything from the supplier KYC. We are going to do from the buyer's KYC. All the checks and balances we are going to do, because that's the norm. That's what is required.
So Richard earlier, who was moderating the earlier session, said that one of the problems with diamonds started when the stones were put online and a pricing index was attached to them and they were commoditized. So RapNet has just, I think a week ago, announced that they are now going to have colored gemstones on RapNet. And we know that that's a very visible sort of pricing index. It's a very visible space and a very visible platform where you can go and look at prices, you can go and see. And so I'm curious to get your views, and I'll come back to you, but I want to maybe start with, or maybe I'll start with you since you're talking about Gemora. What is your reaction to something like this?
Look, I'm no more a miner, so I think so I'm in a very different place now. I think person sitting next to me should be worried more. I think not me. But if you have to ask me what is my view, I think obviously Rap Report comes with a lot of credibility. They have done a beautiful job in diamonds, and obviously prices have got plus and minuses. If you ask my personal view,
Yeah, because you have an auction platform which is not going to declare the prices at which it's sold. That's why I'm asking you the question.
So let me tell you my personal view. Yes. Okay, my personal view, and this is not the first time something like pricing in color gemstone has come. It has come even during my days when I was in Gemfields. It came back when I was in Fura. I've always formed a view, and that has been my personal belief, that God has taken millions of years to create these precious gemstones, whether it is diamond or color gemstones. And we do, as a miner, put a lot of effort to mine it out. And there is a lot of value add that is done by polishers and eventually designers, and until the time it is sold as an end jewelry to the end consumer. And how do you put price to what is the value for the designer? And how do you put a price to the value of a polisher? And how do you put a price to the value of the miner? It's very difficult, right? And I always believe some segment like color gemstone or diamond is better to leave the price out, although it does give an indication to the buyer at what price the particular gemstone should be sold, but then it becomes commodity. It just becomes something like gold or something like platinum that is traded in the exchange, right? So I personally believe that it should not happen. That's my personal belief. But is that an industry belief? I don't know.
Peter, any thoughts?
You mean pertaining to pearls?
Pertaining to pearls, pearls could be next on RapNet, or just generally, I think conceptually, because yes, I hear what you're saying, that colored gemstones are, I mean, you can have two stones sitting next to each other with the same color, but there could be something about the crystal quality or the tone of the color or something which will distinguish one from the other. And so what is your view conceptually on this latest news that we've heard in the industry?
They've talked about it in relation to pearls for many, many years, but grading pearls and valuing pearls has such a high level of subjectivity that I don't think it's, I mean, maybe, look, anything could change with AI.
Yes.
It's possible that a combination of AI and high quality visualization technology could achieve a more objective standard of grading and valuing. But short of that, I don't think it's I don't think it's a realistic proposition in relation to pearls.
Yeah, it could be interesting because Googlin has a system where they rate gemstones, like wine ratings, you know, where they assign like a 75% or a 80% or 85%. Could be interesting to see if there's some sort of a tie-up that happens in the future to rate those gemstones that are coming on RapNet. Am I giving people ideas? Rashmi, Elena, anything to add?
So I value gems and jewelry for all my clients, including Zambians and Europeans and Americans. And having these guidelines is a blessing because you can actually help the customer understand where the prices are coming from. But honestly, it takes more than just one person to come up with an actual value. At the end of the day, it's, do you want a resale value? Do you want an insurance value? Which country do you want to have it insured in? Where are you selling it? All of those factors come to play as a valuer.
And lastly, the last consideration to be made here is that for the diamond world was sort of easy-ish to make a price list because they had a uniform language of grading were adopted by everyone in the world, adopted and understood. So clear, put into boxes, etc. And that doesn't exist in color gemstones. So until you don't have any uniformity of language like you have for diamonds, then I don't think anybody can go to greater length. But from a color gemstones perspective, I think it's very flattering that diamonds are putting so much attention on us. So by all means, keep going.
Right, so let's switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to read from this. So as per a recent press release by consulting firm Bain & Co., in 2025, the personal luxury goods market is expected to see its first slowdown since the Great Recession of 2008, excluding COVID, experiencing a -2% erosion at current exchange rates compared to last year. This trend, particularly acute among Gen Z, which are the 13 to 28-year-olds, whose advocacy for luxury brands continues to decline, and this has led to a shrinking of the luxury customer base by a magnitude of about 50 million over the last 2 years. Now, the same report goes on to explain that jewelry is holding strong, especially favored by the high jewelry segment and by a remarkably positive performance within the US market. Now, the challenge with these reports, and I want to talk a little bit about the younger generation and Gen Z. I have a very controversial view on it, which I'm not going to share, but the challenge with these reports sometimes is that it gives you the impression that, you know, this is every single Gen Z on planet Earth, and there are cultural nuances when we look at the same age bracket in Asia, in the Middle East, in the US, in Europe, that also, I don't know if these reports always reflect that, but let's say at a 50,000 feet level, against the backdrop of this report, let's talk about the younger generation, and you mentioned Jackie Kennedy and Audrey Hepburn, and you know, when I think of pearls, I think of that classic elegance. And given that brand perception, and you did mention Beyonce and some of the others, but what is Paspally Pearls doing in terms of communicating to that young age bracket of 18 to 28? Are they even relevant? I mean, I know they're important and I agree on that front, but to what degree?
Well, first of all, they're a different mindset. They have a very experiential mindset.
Yes.
They're much more about, they're the Instagram generation. They like the photo of what they're doing. Actually, that's, if you could, there was a video I asked you to, if you
Oh
would
yes,
play it.
absolutely. Sorry, there's a video. Can we play the Paspali Pearls video from the YouTube?
Just because it will give some context about
Yes.
what I'm about to tell you.
And then after that, we'll play the one that Rashmi also sent before I ask her the next question. Oh gosh, it looks a little scary to look up and see yourself like a ginormous giant. Hopefully the lipstick is still on. It's coming. Okay. Right. So,
So the point of showing that was it was just to explain that it's about creating a desire for more than just the product, but about an emotional connection with the way the product is produced and the place it's produced and the sustainability aspects, and that's how we're communicating with the new generation. It's not so much glossy magazines, more social media, and in that frame of mind.
okay, thank you. Could we also have the video that Rashmi had sent of Jewel of Africa, and this kind of will give you a snapshot of what they're doing in Zambia, and after which I want to ask Rashmi, I want you to explain the work that you're doing with the Ministry of Education to target the younger generation. So could we have that video, please?
The video will show the journey of Jewel of Africa since 1992. long-term goal should be Zambia.
Okay. So one of the, when Alex and Jacob first contacted me for this panel, said, well, 80% of colored gemstones approximately today come from Africa. Can we please have someone from Africa on this panel? So I'm so happy that you flew from Lusaka and you joined us today, and I've actually visited their facility and seen the work that they're doing with the community in Lusaka and in Zambia. So tell us now a little bit about how you're raising the awareness of colored gemstones in Zambia, and also tell us a little bit about the jewelry culture that I think you did briefly mention earlier.
Yeah, so Jewel of Africa has a really small budget for marketing because we've grown organically. Nobody's ever given us money. I mean, governments give each other money, but not to small-scale miners or people who are trying to institutionalize it. Zambia doesn't have a history, doesn't have any stories told, so we angled it that way, where I have heritage collection competitions where we collect designs from around the country, and the best design gets created into a piece of jewelry, and if it sells well in China, it's going to sell well in the US, and that's how we take it forward. So this is how I get the design bases. Every province has a different gemstone. So Zambia is really blessed with a lot, and so we create designs with those gemstones in their pieces of art, take it around the world and see if it does well, and if it does well, great, and we encourage other Zambians to start manufacturing, cutting and polishing and manufacturing jewelry. So before COVID, after COVID, we lost 30% of our staff, right? And we started our collaboration with UNHCR where we started to train refugees. And the government came down heavy asking, why am I training refugees instead of Zambians? But we've been training Zambians for 30 years before that, and we gave the chance to the refugees. And what happened is, now that the refugees have been trained and we've invested in them, they are training Zambians. And then we started the Jewel of Africa Foundation, which again hasn't made any money or hasn't gotten any grants. So Jewel of Africa continues to train, whereas the refugees have improved so much that they are now training the Zambians, and the women from the rural areas are coming on board, and I'm focusing on the women who are really downtrodden, not much hope, and I bring them on because the government says it takes decades to teach them how to cut and polish. And so what I did was pick the one person who literally had no hope, baby on the back, young teenager, abused, put her in my lapidary. And I said to Aditya, who was a 19-year-old girl, you're going to train her. And within 6 months, she's cutting gemstones. We started her on quartz. Right. She's cutting gemstones, understands the refractive index, the critical angles, everything about that gemstone, and creating pieces full of sparkle, total internal reflection, no windows. And so that's the work that we're doing. And I think this is the reason why the market in the US is increasing for Jewel of Africa. Right.
But you're also doing something with the Ministry of Education in schools. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Right, so Jewel of Africa has been supporting several schools around Lusaka and other parts of Zambia. Supporting meaning, there's boreholes, there's classrooms, and basic education curriculum where I actually teach them the science of gemstones. So the science of gemstones, why are Zambian gemstones considered harder? Why are Zambian gemstones greener? It's because of the sodium in our soil. It's because the crystal channels are not hollow. They've got cations that make them harder and more durable. So these are the stories that I want the Zambians to speak. Currently, they don't know. They don't even know what the treasures that they own. And at the end of that video, if we had played it to the end, you would have seen a map of Zambia covered in gemstones. When people are coming in to look for lithium, they're finding spodumene. They're going to look for manganese, and you find spessartites. But we didn't see the map of Zambia full of gemstones. And I don't want you to play the video again, but if you can, just
maybe
just
tomorrow's panel. Maybe on the tomorrow's panel they
tomorrow.
could show it.
Yeah, are we back here tomorrow?
Yeah, well, but you're on another panel tomorrow,
Yeah,
right?
okay, doesn't matter. Yeah. Anyway, there is a map of Zambia. I have a book that says the best of Zambia, and you can learn from that one. So the whole idea is to raise awareness in the next generation, so they don't come up and say, we don't know how to manage this industry, which will become an industry if I can help it locally. in their primary education, show them the treasures that we have. In secondary, the science behind them, because it's all really the periodic table, all the chemicals coming together, giving you different colors, and if you heat them, treat them, fluorescence, blah, blah, blah. By the time they get to tertiary, that's when you can start value adding. For us, value addition should be focused on creating and cutting the perfect gemstones with the perfect sparkle. Jewelry manufacture is still secondary. That'll come second, and if we can have an institution by then that trains people how to melt and solder and create different designs. I mean, like South Africa has a 5-year degree program.
Okay.
I can run your video from minute 3 when you start speaking. Let's just do that.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, and then it's
Okay.
just a minute after that.
If you have the time, then that would be great. Thank you.
Identifying themselves with the gemstones that we have, you know. Introducing gemstones and the map of Zambia where all the gems are represented into our educational curriculum. That's another thing. And say, what does Zambia have for me? It's got the Victoria Falls, it's got the wildlife, it's got the safari, and it has the gemstones. It's because we as Zambians are not promoting them. We have to get the next generation on board.
It's important.
You know, they cannot inherit another poor Zambia. That's that. It's just filling up every month as we go along the years. And so I've had meetings with Ministry of Education to try and inculcate and start creating
Brilliant.
a curriculum around it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Get him addicted and hooked from day one.
Yeah, treasures. All the kids love treasure.
And so both you and Peter are not just mining and farming, you're also producing jewelry, and you have online platforms where you're selling these jewels. But that's not common. Most people tend to stop at mining or manufacturing or cutting and polishing. What was the reason why you got into this vertical integration and to go down that jewelry path?
Well, we did it more than 40 years ago. We opened our first retail store. Today we have 13, I think. For the same reason as I was discussing before, if you're selling a commoditized product, it's a race to the bottom. If you develop a brand, it's valued differently. And we just figured that we are the best positioned to tell the story of our gem. There was also a niche in the market because nobody else was doing it. There was Mikimoto, of course, but they're not specialized in South Sea pearls. There was nobody who was specializing in it. So we did it.
And is there something that you would like to talk about, some of the challenges, Rashmi, in the work that you're doing in Lusaka? Because I remember having a conversation where you were talking about carne and you were talking about hallmarking. Can you tell us a little bit about?
Yes, so cutting and polishing gemstones doesn't sell in Zambia. Polished gemstones do not sell because they don't have them anywhere, they don't have anywhere to take them to set them. So that was the next best thing. I studied jewelry design at one point in my life and started training Zambians on how to make high-end pieces. Then we purchased the longest standing jewelry company, that was in 1974 and 2007. Inherited 40 jewelers. Had to retrain them because they were catering for the local market. And so in order to export and it took a lot of work. And then we have issues around health. I mean, these are real issues around HIV, and so we need to bring all of the awareness in, and out of the 40, I have 20 left.
Because of
we
HIV?
Yes, and then COVID came and took out a few more, and we realized the need to have a top jeweler and an apprentice, and that's when the project, the women came in, and I started looking out at all the different artisanal mining areas, picking out 5 women per area and saying, how can we go about making this possible? So the challenges are health, the fact that there's a serious lack of awareness, even though I have the TEDx talk and I've done talks and I podcasts, etc. Access to electricity. Who's going to download a podcast to watch it? So that is progress. I mean, it's waiting to happen. It's going to take a long time. Hopefully the next generation will be on board. I mean, some of the other challenges, there isn't an institution. We are the institution. They come in, they start learning from scratch how to cut straight lines through a piece of metal.
But also on hallmarking, you don't have hallmarking
Oh, yeah.
in Zambia, right?
Zambia doesn't, we do the hallmarking, and we
Sorry,
learned
I'm
the
not
hard
trying
way.
to feed her the answer, but I remember she was telling me about it.
Yes, so nobody cares about hallmarking in Zambia, except we're the exporters. So whoever's importing needs to know that our metal is hallmarked and the gemstones are guaranteed and certified. So luckily we have valuers and gemstones and XRF equipment to hallmark.
So you've talked a lot about giving back to the community and the positive impact of what you're doing, which brings me to my next question for the panelists. You know, I mean, if we were having this panel discussion maybe a decade or even more ago, the question I would have asked was, you know, is responsible behavior, sustainable practices, positive impact, how important is it, how relevant, and of course, fantastic that we're well past that. So I think what I would like to ask all of you is to just share briefly some of the initiatives that each one of you are involved in. And Rashmi, you've already spoken at great length about the work that you're doing. But maybe I can come to you, Elena, and you can talk about some of the practices of Gemfields, and then we'll hop back to Peter and finish with Dave on this.
So Gemfield's been a market leader in responsible mining since day one. We've always had very clear in our minds that our mine had to support the communities around by way of supporting them with projects around education, livelihood, and health. Those are the pinnacles of our CR projects. We also live and breathe very strongly towards our pillars, our core pillars, which are legitimacy, integrity, and transparency. And we adopt these practices, this principle at every level of our operations, from the mines in Africa all the way through to the head office in London. But these are beautiful words and big corporate talks. But really, who came to our mines and was able to see for their eyes what we do and how we do it, really understood that our journey for continuous improvement and also our continuous search for third-party validification for our claims are true.
Yeah, and one of the things that, one of the questions I always get asked is, and especially when I'm talking to a younger audience, is, but mining is bad for the earth. There's a big hole in the ground. And then I learned at your mine on how you have a seed bank and, in-pit dumping, and how there's water conservation and all the different initiatives, which maybe a skeptic would say that, yeah, that you're supposed to be doing that. You're not doing anyone any favors, and it's part of your sort of mining license or your responsibility. And but it is important, and it's not just ticking that box. You go well and beyond just the regulatory stuff. And Dave, would you like to jump in here and talk a little bit about Fura or Gemfields or some of the initiatives around the world?
Look, I think out of all the 5 mines that I built, the one that is very difficult to choose, but that always remains close to my heart is Colombia, I would say. Because Colombia has been, the most difficult mine I built out of 5, I would say. But at the same time, it is also very close to my heart, purely because when we entered in Colombia in 2017, I first went there in 2012, and then I kept going, and eventually we bought the mine under Fura. It was a conflict zone, right? It was a conflict zone, and even people from Bogota would not enter Cosquez mine. That's how alienated they were. Women were not allowed to enter the mine when we first went there. And there was a lot of cultural bias that I would say. The mine was shut for 14, 15 years. The biggest impact that we did was, the first thing was, from 0 to 22% of the workforce were women. So that was a big shift. And women not only working in administrative jobs, but also from mine geologists to mining engineers, so on and so forth, I think right at the face of the mine. But the thing that summarized the entire thing and it brought into perspective when Cosquez became a shutdown mine to the world's largest underground emerald mine, where till I left the company, was a day, which was my last visit and to the mine, and my head of chef, she's a lady, 76 years old, and she said, I want to come and thank you for what you have done to the community, and she just started crying, and I didn't realize like what she was trying to say. And she said, you need to understand, I'm 76, I have seen the worst part of this region. This region has seen the thousands of deaths just because of conflict, and now we get salary, we get pension, we get health, and I would say touching the life of people is more important than anything else we do. Removing the entire region from conflict to bringing them to a mainstream, that always felt very proud of, what we could achieve. And Cosquez Emeralds has now come back to the world, no more Pablo Escobar era, So when you see the Netflix and you see the first picture of the emerald being counted, that's the Cosquez mine that they show, right? From there to what it is now, we really built it up, and doing clinic, doing school, it's our job, as you said. Taking care of environment, it's our job. It's miner's job. And I always believed, and I used to tell my team, like, don't use these things for your marketing gimmicks, because I feel you're not doing any favor to anyone. This is our responsibility. Don't go and shout that you put a bore well, because that's your job. When you are going into Africa or Colombia or Australia, wherever you go, it's your job to take care of the land, because you are a foreigner in that country, and you have to take care of it. But beyond that, what you do is what it counts.
Absolutely. And I remember researching, when I was researching for my book, and one of the stories is a land called Kajam, and I came across this folklore where women were not allowed at the mine because the concept, the thought, the belief was that the emerald is also a woman, and if a woman enters the mine, then the emerald will get jealous and will hide away. So because of that, women were not allowed, were considered unlucky, that if a woman enters a mine, and there's a lovely story about Ixilda, who is your head chef at Kajam Emerald Mine now, and the things that she had to go through when she first started working at the mine, and the experiences that she had. So I do remember this, and that's what it's all about. It's about changing that mindset and bringing about that ripple effect in the community. Peter, anything that you would like to add? I mean, perhaps related to the environment or some of the other work that you're doing in Australia?
Well, when it comes to environmental aspects, we're very lucky because producing good quality pearls requires really pristine environment. So we, unlike with most industries, the environment and our financial interests are closely aligned. So it's not an impost on us to look after the environment. It's kind of part of what we have to do. So nothing else really to add. Just that.
That's fine. And let's talk about the role of government for a second. I mean, and this is something that I talk about a lot, saying that, when it comes to responsible behavior, supportive behavior, the conversation tends to, and the finger pointing also tends to start with the miners or manufacturers and people in the pipeline. But let's discuss a little bit about how, and I'll start with you, Dev, because you have dealt with government agencies in Colombia, in Zambia, Mozambique, Sri Lanka, Australia, wide variety. So tell us a little bit about what your experiences have been. And I mean, as we already spoke about what's happening in Zambia, and I think, there can be a huge impact on something which may sound like a simple regulatory change on an entire industry. So what has been your experience in dealing with government agencies, and maybe what have been some of your learnings. I don't want to get you guys into trouble in the future.
Look, I think every country brings different challenges, and every government within country brings different challenges, right? It's very difficult to sit in a room and tell very specific. But I think one of the thing that I always felt, especially with Gemstone, Gemstone is always, there is an emotional connect between the government and the miner. It's beyond revenue and it's beyond taxes for them. And
And
they
also the vote bank.
and also the vote bank, right? It's always a mix of everything. And the one thing that I will always seen, and I think my personal experience has been that the more you keep talking to the government, you just have to keep talking, you get the things done. And you have to do a right thing in a right way, and there is no shortcut there. And we have seen this Zambian tax during my time. This was suspended and now it has come back. It was there in 2000, it came back, it has just come back, right? And it's going to go. I've got no doubt in my mind it's going to go. Like Colombia, I would say when I first entered in Colombia 2017, we had only 3 years of title left. The license was expiring. That was the biggest challenge. We still took the plunge. I personally sat with the president of the country, the Minister of Mines, the Minister of Finance, and we explained them how we are going to convert the life of the region, and they believed in us. And we were one of the 3 miners who had 30-year license. Not only emerald miner, I'm saying miners in all commodities in Colombia to get 30-year license, and that to be tagged as a large-scale miners, allowed to build a 4x4 decline going right down to 2 kilometer, which was not heard of before in Colombia, but that went through because of education and explanation. You just have to keep talking. There is no shortcut. Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. There is no guarantee of success. But I think the most important word I always say dealing with the government is the word patience. There has to be an element of patience. One is to have, and
I feel like you've reached a very spiritual stage of your life, Dev.
and
When you said patience, I could see Rashmi rolling her eyebrows.
look, I think I could understand their plight, but I've dealt with the President Sata regime. I've dealt with the President Banda regime. Have dealt with in Zambia. I've seen the change, right? And the same thing in Sri Lanka. I've seen Colombia. I've seen the left government under the current President Pedro, and I've seen the extreme right and the conservative government also in Colombia. We see the different regime, different way they think, and Australia has been the most easiest thing in the planet Earth because you don't talk to the government, you just talk to the authorities and they log in and you just do everything online, right?
No.
So it's much easier it has been much easier for us. But Madagascar, right? I spent 4 years in Madagascar. Tough, right? How do you educate government there, right? So it comes with their own challenges. If you believe in your resource and if you want to stick there, you need to have patience. If you don't have patience, give the mind back and go to some other country. As simple as that.
Well, speaking of Madagascar, I know Gemfields has had some interesting situations with Madagascar where an aide to the president had. Do you want to tell the story or you want me to tell the story? Okay. An aide to the president had approached them for a bribe in exchange for a mining license. And Gemfields reported that to the UK authorities. Those 2 individuals were arrested. They were tried in a court in the UK and convicted. And that was the first time something like this has ever happened. Now, what does that mean for Gemfields ever to operate a sapphire mine in Madagascar? Time will tell. But like you said, Dave, that is a risk that you take when you've decided to walk down the straight and narrow. And on that delightful note, maybe I should have picked a different question to end the panel discussion on. But thank you, everyone. You've been the most attentive and patient audience, and I do appreciate all of you being here after lunch, and the floor is open for questions. And thank you, Jacob and Alex and the team of the conference for including us in the Diamond Conference. Hey, we are in the title. So, so yeah, over to, I'm a sales and marketing person. Take the mic away from me. I'll never stop talking. So the floor is yours. Anyone has any questions? David, and then one here, one there. There's a mic hopefully coming to both of you in 10 minutes. Okay, we have 10 minutes for questions. Should we just give you one of the mics on the stage, maybe? Thank you, Vrinda. Since the clock is ticking.
Thank you. David Brough, Jewellery Outlook magazine. I'm lucky enough to go to the magnificent jewels auctions at Geneva and other centres hosted by Christie's and Sotheby's. And I still see what appears to be a very clear premium of Colombian emeralds over Zambian emeralds, and also of Burmese rubies over Mozambican rubies. So I'm just interested in the views of the panel on how they see the outlook for this premium and what factors may change the premium, including factors relating to rarity and marketing.
Would anyone like to go for it? Elena?
I can go, yes. I think it's down to history, David. When the stars were walking the red carpet wearing fabulous Colombian emeralds, Zambian emeralds were still sleeping in the ground, embedded in their host rock, because they've been mined for the first time in the 1970s. So they're just going to need a little bit more time to be set into jewelry that will be considered vintage then. And then they will probably have a stronger presence in the at the auction houses. For rubies, I see the situation different. I think ruby auction houses, you less seldomly see unusual origins at auction. You do come across Thai ruby and other sources that are not your obvious ones. So for ruby, I see the market being different, but I agree with you. Zambian emeralds are still the young little brothers, or probably people just don't want to part from them, so they don't resell them, you know?
I remember when we discovered Estela de Fura, the large ruby, and we took a bold step of cutting and polishing it. This is the first stone we cut, like I cut in my life.
Tell them first what is Estrella de Fura?
Oh, okay. So Estela de Fura is the largest ruby ever discovered in the planet for last 700 years in the gem quality category, 101 carat in rough, and we then cut it into 55.22 carat in cut under Fura, and we looked into a different option, and everybody said you will never be able to sell a Mozambican gem quality ruby in auction house because you will not get a price. We took the punt, and now the Estela de Fura, coming from Mozambique, is the largest revenue earner, like the most expensive ruby ever, not only ruby, the most expensive color gemstone ever sold in the auction houses. So we changed that perspective. So the perspective is, you need to keep telling the story, and you just have to keep telling the differentiation factor. Burma obviously remains the brand for a lot of people in terms of pricing, but I'm pretty sure Estela de Fura was the first one to break that jinx about Burma versus Mozambique.
But if I may add to that, we have to remember that there's also the rarity factor. And both Burma origin and Colombian origin are low iron stones. So there are multiple factors that contribute to that premium. And so if we look at the rarity factor of an untreated ruby of a certain size coming from Burma, or an untreated no-oil emerald coming from Colombia of a certain size, the rarity factor kicks in, which also adds to the premium.
No, I think even Mozambique offers lower iron stones.
Yes.
But I think this is where lab becomes a little bit clever, and they put a little bit of jargons like long fluorescence and short fluorescence. And they came with the concept, Burma looks into short fluorescence, Mozambique doesn't, and I never understood what it means. I said, when you take a ruby out in the sun, it fluoresces, it's a long fluorescence. No one is going to see the ruby like this. What does the short fluorescence means anyway? They could never answer that question, but That's the jargon,
This
to
is
be
the first
honest.
time I've heard of this long fluorescence and short fluorescence.
I
I'm
think
like,
it's phosphorescence. Fluorescence and phosphorescence.
Phosphorescence.
I think that's the key.
Sorry?
The other thing is
Longer.
anything that's above 80 years old becomes vintage and hence the value is higher. When I'm
Right.
appraising,
I don't
yeah.
know how many. Yes, you had a question. Yes, please go
Hi,
ahead.
good evening. This is Gunjan Jain. I have a question for Dev. As you mentioned that the platform would be for the high quality gemstones. So two things. One, how do you expect the gemstones coming to the platform, or how are you searching about these gemstones? And second, would there be a reserve price?
Yeah, I think the first thing about how it comes, I think most of the first auction has been sourced from the people that we know for 20 years. Mostly is coming from the people, like all is coming from the people who own the stones. So we're not sourcing from any broker network. So that's not what is happening. We're running through our KYC process as I explained to Richa before. Yes, there is going to be a reserve price. There is going to be a guide. There is going to be a catalog. So the catalog will come with a reserve price, and will also give the range of the prices that we're expecting for each stones.
Any other questions?
Yes, Risha, if I may, as the moderator of this, the MC of this panel, may I ask the last question?
Please.
And Peter, could you, dialing back to cultured pearls,
Yes.
Peter, those of us who know a little bit about pearls know Paspali pearls, the history of the company, the glorious stories of the Greek forefathers of the company. They know the story of Robert I. They may know the story of the blue pearls of the Cook Islands. That I'm just pulling out of my head what I remember. Branding of locality, origin of cultured pearls. What do you feel in the market is the preference, or is there a development where you see that your marketing efforts, your sustainability efforts, etc., come together and are an advantage, or how does that look in the market right now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a particular preference for the location of origin per se. I think it's related to the way, the perception of how the gem is, or how the pearl is produced. So the sustainability issues, the social issues, the governance issues all come into play, of course. But nobody's buying anything just because of those things. It may be something that discourages somebody from buying something. What I mean is, somebody's not going to buy any gemstone just because of the way it was produced. It'll maybe deter them from buying it if they think it was produced incorrectly, but it's not going to drive them to buy it just because it was produced correctly. There's got to be more to it than that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're running out of time and we've finished.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I get a big hand of applause for our moderator, Richa Goyal Sikri, for Rashmi Sharma, Ilana Basaglia, for Dev Shetty, and for Peter Bracher. Not in that order, definitely, but this is how it, women first and then the guys. So thank you so much for your, why am I doing this? For your being here, for preparing this panel so diligently, and it has been a beautifully balanced panel, I think, and thank you so much. I hope this is a precedent for future panels for colored gemstones at conference of this stature. It would be great. Then you are, thank you again. And just let's give our photographers a moment to take a picture of you. While the photographers do their thing, I will do mine. Again, a bit of household. It is 4:20. Let's try to be back here in half an hour, 10 to 5, to begin our last panel, but not least panel, I would say. Margot Stewart, our moderator, has worked diligently as well in order to prepare this panel and make it a wholesome experience, I would say, as to the quality and the contributions that the panelists will be able to give us. So I know it's a long day. And in my days as editor-in-chief of IDEX Online, I, in 2019, came to the JCK show after about 4 years. And in the AGTA pavilion, a dealer called out to me and he said, "Hey, I haven't seen you for a while. I thought you had left the business." And I shot back at him from my hip. I said, "My friend, our industry is like Hotel California. You can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave. So don't you leave us for this panel of technology. Solidarity is all, unity is all, as you heard. So come and be with us for the last panel and conclude a wonderful day. And looking forward to a bit of rest and then our dinner at 8. The last thing that I need to intimate to you, go when you have your coffee. You can get if you don't have a QR code on your badge, that will enable you to enter the jewelry show. So check that over there, check it, look at it. If you don't have it, then make sure you get one over there. And with the program to tomorrow, you saw that we have Invest Qatar at 9 to 10, then a break until 12:30 when it's lunch. You are invited to turn to Irina, who is in the back of the room in a beautiful, she's waving right now, and tell her if you want to go on a tour of the Qatar National Museum so that we can get an idea how many of you want to join. Thank you and see you in 30 minutes, hopefully.